back. I'm super excited to go over my Sorcerer build that I'm running now that Subclassing has dropped. There's a few different builds I want to go over and show with you today. All of the builds that I'm going to show you are very competitive in open world BGs and 1v1s. So you don't have to make a lot of changes if you're going from dueling into the BG scene or dueling into Cyrodiil. You can roll with the exact same build in all of those different scenes. A lot of people were saying that Sorcerer cannot be competitive this patch. There's just way better builds that you can run. However, that is just not true. Sorcerer still is one of the best classes to run in all of the different scenes, and also it has one of the most broken skill lines that no matter what class you're actually playing as, you're most likely running Storm Calling in your subclassing. Alright, well let's jump right into it. First things first, I'm running an add-on called Superstar. That way you can see everything in my build without me having to highlight it. So that way if you want to fast forward and see some of the other builds or jump right into the content, feel free to do that. I am a Breton. You could also run a Dark Elf. That is just as good as a Breton. You could also run a High Elf, however I don't think it's as good as a Breton or a Dark Elf. On the front bar I'm running Merciless Resolve. Of course I am. This ability is insane. It does so much damage. Not only that, the changes that they've made that allows you to stack up to 2 Merciless Resolves and shoot them one after each other is just absolutely busted, and everybody knows it. So as you build 5 stacks, you can shoot off an arrow that's going to do 17k damage, and you can stack up to 10 times, meaning that you can shoot one after the other. It's also going to heal you for 51% of the damage dealt if you're in melee range. So this ability stacks as you apply, as you do light and heavy attacks. So it's going to give you those stacks. It's also going to increase your weapon and spell damage by 30 up to 10 times. So the more stacks you have, the more damage you have as well. The second ability that I'm using is Inner Light. It's what we're using to expose people who are in stealth. It's also going to give us our major savagery and prophecy buff. It's also going to increase our max mag by 5%. We're no longer stacking mag this patch. However, the more mag you have, the more damage you're going to do. So this is still better than Camouflage Hunter. Not to mention Camouflage Hunter gives you the Minor Berserk if you're behind them, but we're already getting Minor Berserk on our front bar from our new Mythic. So LA Weapon is an insane spammable. I love this ability, mostly because of the Sigic Order passives. So if we go to the Sigic Order passives, we can see that there is this passive called Spell Orb. So when you reach 5 spell charges, meaning that you've used LA Weapon 5 times, it's going to generate a Spell Orb that's going to do 4,000 damage, and that's unbuffed to the closest enemy. And then also we're going to get Concentrated Barrier, which is like a shield. It's a 5,000 damage shield that can be applied every 10 seconds. So you can apply it, and if it breaks, then it can come back up in 10 seconds. So Sigic Order is a great skill line because of those passives, which makes LA Weapon a great spammable. The heal that I'm running is another completely busted ability, Healing Soul. It's going to heal you, it's going to give you 10,000 health, it's going to do healing over time, and it's also going to grant you major vitality, which is going to increase your healing by 12%. Absolutely busted scribing ability, and in all of my builds I'm using this heal. There's not any other scribing abilities that I'm running right now. The next most busted ability in the game is Streak, and everybody knows it. No matter what class you're playing, if you're in open world, you probably have Streak nowadays, or Ball of Lightning. It's just so broken. Whether you're roll dodging or you're holding block, Streak is going to go through both of those. You're going to get stunned by Streak, which allows us to do our combos. All right. Next ability I'm running is our ultimate Dawnbreaker, which is going to do a ton of damage. The nice thing about Dawnbreaker is you can often catch people in their roll dodge at the end of your streak. So most people will try to break free and roll dodge, but if you hit them with a Dawnbreaker right after, you're going to die. The other nice thing about Dawnbreaker is in the passives, there's a passive called Slayer, which is just going to increase your damage by 3% whenever you have a Fighter's Guild ability slotted. Alright, on the back bar we're running Hurricane, which is great because it's going to do damage over time. It's also going to give us our Major Resolve buff and Minor Expedition buff, which is going to increase our physical and spell resistance. Also, we're running a set called Wretched Vitality, which when you're in combat, if you apply a major or minor buff to yourself, it's going to give you your Magicka and Stamina Recovery. And so just being on the back bar applying Hurricane is going to automatically give you Wretched Vitality, both the major and minor Wretched Vitality buffs. The next ability I'm running is Haunting Curse. This is what we use as a damage on the back bar. However, oftentimes I swap this out for Blast Bones. But Haunting Curse is really great. The only thing about Haunting Curse is that it can be cleansed. So if you're dueling somebody who often cleanses, it's great to swap that out for Blast Bones. Not only to have something to line of sight and body block for you, but it's also going to apply a major debuff to the enemy. Haunting Curse does a ton of damage, but the problem is that it can be cleansed. I really like Haunting Curse when you're in open world and BGs though, because Blast Bones often get stuck. So that's why I'm using Haunting Curse when I'm in Cyrodiil. Next ability I'm running is LE Sus. It's going to give us our Major Breach, which is going to reduce their physical and spell resistances. It's also going to apply the Burning Shield and Concuss status effects every 7.5 seconds. Resolving Vigor is our heal on the back bar. It's also going to give us Minor Resolve. This heal is insane if you can keep it up when you know that their burst combo is coming. You just pop Major Resolving Vigor and it's going to give you a ton of healing. And that is an unbuffed heal too, so it gets even bigger when we're buffed up. Crit Surge is absolutely busted. Another ability that comes from the Stormcalling skill line. No matter what class you're running, this is the best Major Brutality buff in the game. Why? Because it's going to heal you for 3,000 health every second if you're doing critical damage. So you think about like a dot DK who's putting out, let's say, 10 dots a second. One of those dots are very well probably doing critical damage, which is going to heal you every second. So Crit Surge is an absolutely busted ability coming from the Sorcerer Stormcalling skill line. Energy Overload, another completely busted ability. Why? Because Energy Overload can be combined with another ultimate. So for example, you can pop Energy Overload at like 200, use it all the way down to 100, and then still pop Dawnbreaker. So you can use two ultimates at the exact same time. It also pairs very well with LE Weapon. LE Weapon can shoot off your light attacks with your Energy Overload. So it pairs very well with that. You can also shoot Energy Overload into the ground, and you can generate 1200 magic and stamina. So whether you're shooting it at the enemy or into the ground, if you need resources, you can pop Energy Overload and get your resources back. Alright, let's go over my stats. I'm running 54 points in mag and 10 points in health. That puts my stats at 29k in Magicka and at 27k in health. Now, if I am running in Cyrodiil and Open World, I may buff this up just a little bit more, get this to 30k so you're not an easy target for a lot of people just looking for people under 30k. But for me, I like to be under 30k, it gives me a little bit more damage, and it works just fine for me. As far as the food I'm running Orzorgas. So let me pull that up real quick. Orzorgas is going to give you your max health, health recovery, stamina, and magic recovery. So it's a really great food to be using on this build. These stats right here are unbuffed. Let me go ahead and buff up so we can see what those stats look like unbuffed. Or buffed, I should say. Alright. So buffed up, we have 4,000 damage. We have 42% crit damage, 7,010, 28k in magical resist, and 22k in physical resist. As far as the Mundus Stone we're running the Shadow. And then let's go ahead and jump into our abilities. So actually I'm going to talk about the Mundus real quick. So the reason I'm running Shadow is I think Mage is good, and I also think if you're struggling for sustain in open world or in BGs, you should go ahead and switch to the Atronach. The reason I love the Shadow is oftentimes I get people really low, and if they didn't die, I always think, well, if I just had a little bit more crit damage, they probably would have died, and that's where the Shadow fills in. I'm oftentimes doing a ton of critical damage, so if I can increase my crits just a little bit, and if people can die easier that way, that's the reason I'm running the Shadow. I think it's a very broken Mundus Stone as well. So as far as the different pieces of gear I'm running 1 medium, 4 light, and 2 heavy pieces. That's going to give me a lot of my penetration from the light pieces, as well as still get the passive from the Undaunted ability skill line right here, which is increases your max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% per type of armor. So I'm getting 6% max health, stamina, and magicka simply because I'm running 1 medium, 1 light, and 1 heavy. The reason I'm also running 2 heavy is because these are my 2 big pieces, and so I've reinforced on my big pieces, on my chest and leg. And then also my other big piece is my head, which is why it's medium. Alright, going over the set pieces. On the front bar, I'm running Kjolnir's. This is a great ability that procs does a ton of damage after 5 stacks. There's just so many different monster sets you could run. In open world, I love running Bloodspawn or Roxas to give more mag recovery. Kjolnir's is also phenomenal in open world, especially if you're trying to kill somebody who is just a tank. It's going to give that little bit of extra damage that you need. It's also super overpowered in 1v1s. I mean, almost every person and their mom is going to be running this ability. Unless you're me and you're a Sorc, you may very well also run Yarrels, because Yarrels is going to apply a debuff to the enemy that's going to reduce their healing by 1% up to 35 stacks. So that's 35% reduction in healing. And if you combine this with some type of major and minor debuff to their healing, you're gonna also reduce their healing by an additional 20%, which Blast Bones alone gives you that major debuff to reduce their healing. So you can get their healing reduced significantly. So oftentimes I slot Yarrows when I'm going up against like a Templar that I know is just going to be super tanky and they're just going to heal the entire duel. Or if there's somebody in VGs in open world that I want to kill, I'll often slot Yarrows because it's just overpowered. The trainee is my chest piece. This is just going to give us a lot of armor, and then I have Magicka as the enchant just because I'm trying to stack my mag for more damage. It's going to give us a little bit of extra health too. Rallying Cry is one of our 5 pieces that we're running. Rallying Cry is one of the best sets in the game, in my opinion. It's going to give us a ton of crit resist. So there is a lot of people stacking crit this patch. So having Rallying Cry is almost a guaranteed way to stop yourself from dying to pretty much everybody. Especially Nightblade mains who are still doing incap and merciless resolves. Those are still hitting really hard. So if you don't have a ton of critical resistance, you're going to get one tapped really easily. Not only am I running Rallying Cry, but I also have Inpen on most of my pieces of gear simply because there's just so much crit damage in this patch. So I'm really stacking a lot of crit resist. My waist or sash is the Rallying Cry. Again, it's well fitted. I'm running Greaves of Wretched Vitality. So Wretched Vitality is our second 5 piece. It's reinforced with Magicka because I'm trying to push my damage. Wretched Vitality, when you have your 5 piece bonus, it's going to apply a major and minor buff to yourself, which is going to increase your Magicka and stamina and recovery. So if you do the major buff, it's going to increase it by 260, and if you get a minor buff on yourself, it's going to increase your recoveries by 130. So it's a great ability, especially for a Sorc. Honestly, Essence Thief is a really great set, but when you're running as a ranged sorcerer, you can't oftentimes hit an enemy and then run up and get really close to them just to go pick up your stack of Essence Thief. While Essence Thief in and of itself is probably going to give you more damage, it's not realistic to run on a Sorc who's often kiting their enemy. Alright, next set piece I'm running is Rallying Cry Shoes. And we've got the Ring of Wretched Vitality. It is infused weapon damage, so again, I'm not stacking mag. The reason I mostly stacked mag before was because of my Hardened Ward, but now we're just stacking damage. Alright, then we get into our Mythic, one of the most busted Mythics in the game for sure, because while you're in combat on your front bar, you're going to get Major Force, which is going to give you a huge increase in your crit damage, and then you're also going to get Minor Berserk, which is going to increase your overall damage, and then you're going to apply Minor Vulnerability to yourself. On your back bar, you're going to get Major Protection, and then you're also going to get Minor Vitality and Minor Timidity, which is a debuff you apply to yourself that takes your ultimate away. We're also running an Amulet of Wretched Vitality. It's going to be infused with weapon damage. On the front bar, we're running a Lightning Staff of Rallying Cry. It's sharpened and it's doing the Absorb Stamina. Why do we run Absorb Stamina? Because it's going to apply a status effect that's going to give us more damage. Because we're not often applying martial damage, we want to have this as Absorb Stamina glyph that's going to give us that martial damage so that we can do more damage to our enemy. Also, it's going to give us more recovery store stamina. On the back bar, we're running Ice Staff of Wretched Vitality. It's infused weapon damage. That way we get the berserks. We're not on our back bar very long oftentimes. Oftentimes we're just doing 1 or 2 buffs and then we're going back to our front bar. In that time, if you're weaving a light attack, you may very well proc this, which is going to give you that berserk clip, allowing you to do more damage when you're on your front bar. Also, if you're struggling to survive, you can get rid of your savagery buff on the front bar and put on Revealing Flare. That way you have major protection on both bars. And then you can run this Essence of Spell Crit instead of your Tripod. Tripod is what I use most of the time, but if you don't want to use that, you can create some of these potions, which is going to give your Major Prophecy buff, and then it's going to also restore health and magicka. That way, if you're struggling to survive on the front bar, maybe you're up against somebody who's just doing a lot of pressure, and you're just trying to survive, then putting Revealing Flare on the front bar, which is where you should be most of the time, that way you have major protection, because again, Monomyth is only applying major protection to the back bar. So now you're going to have major protection on both the front and back bar, and then you're not losing your spell crit because you have a potion to replace that. Alright, let me go ahead and switch to a different build real quick. I have a few different builds inside my armory I want to go over with you. The first one is my Necro build. This one replaces Daedric Summoning for Gravelord instead. Gravelord is going to give us Blast Bones. Blast Bones is great instead of Haunting Curse because it's going to apply that major defile to the enemy, which is going to reduce their healing by 12%. It also does a ton of damage, and it can't be cleansed. It always hits the enemy. Problem with Blast Bones is when you're in open world or in BGs, unless you're doing like a 1v1 or you're in really close quarters combat, I mean, this thing just gets stuck or it doesn't hit anybody. So as far as when you're running around in open world, it's not always the best to be running. The next build I want to go over with you is your Pure Sorc build. Alright, so this is the build that I was running last patch, except for I got rid of Hardened Ward. And we're no longer running 2 Dawns either, because of the fact that we're running Hurricane. So you can still make a Pure Sorc work very easily. You do not have to run any of the other skill lines and subclassing to make Pure Sorc work. This is what I'm running on my Pure Sorc, and in duels it works very well. I love running Pure Sorc in BGs, it's still very competitive. And then as far as when I'm running in open world, Pure Sorc is probably my second favorite, right outside of just having a Merciless Resolve on my front bar instead of a Crystal Frag. Alright, the next build I want to go over is my anti-heal. This is what I love to run against somebody who's sitting in a rune and just healing most of the duel. Alright, it combines running Blast Bones, which is going to give your major defile, like I talked about, the 12%. And then you're also going to use Gerals, which is going to give you 35% healing reduction. So for some of those people who just love to sit in a rune and heal and wait for some major, ultimate 500 Battle Org on you, you're going to want to run this so you reduce their healing so you can actually kill them. Alright, the next build I love to show off is this Arc Nuker build. So you're running Arcanist, Herald of the Tome skill line. When this subclassing patch first came out, I saw Gramster running this, and it looked like a lot of fun, so I put it together. You have a couple of different changes with Blast Bone still, but some of the abilities that we're running on this is we're running the Flail, then we're running Escalating Rune Blades, and then on the back bar we're running this one that gives you your major brutality. It's also going to do an additional damage when you strike an enemy and restore mag and stamina, so it's an absolutely busted major brutality buff. I like Escalating Rune Blades because the last Rune Blade actually does AoE, so if they try to roll dodge it, it's still going to apply damage. And then why do we like Flail over Merciless? Because if you streak somebody and they roll dodge and they try to avoid your Merciless, they can't avoid the Flail because it's an AoE damage, so it's going to hit them regardless of if they're roll dodging or not. So they have to know to break free and hold block versus break free and roll dodging, because oftentimes the Flail is going to hit them, whereas in your Merciless may miss. Similar to if they break free and roll dodge, you would hit them with a Dawnbreaker. This way you can constantly apply pressure after them while they're trying to roll dodge with the Flail. Alright, and then the last build I want to show you is my BG Open World AoE build. I love this build because it's going to give us a ton of speed, it's going to give us a ton of recoveries. Let's go and take a look at it. So on this build we're running Blood Spawn because it's going to give us more physical and spell resist, and it's also going to give us recoveries. A lot of stam recovery is needed when we're in open world because we're constantly running and we're roll dodging, and it's great, which is also the reason why I'm running Bullnetch from the Warden Animal Companion skill line, which is going to give us our major brutality buff. It's also going to give us stamina recovery, and every 5 seconds it's going to remove a negative effect, and also it's going to give us a 5% damage buff. So Bullnetch is just completely busted. We're also running Deep Fissure, which is a crazy good damage on the back bar, similar to our Blast Bones or our Haunting Curse, but this is going to give them major and minor breach, reducing their physical and spell resistance by almost 8,000. So it's a really good one. It's 6 plus 3 actually, so 9,000 physical and spell resistance reduction. So really great ability. The only problem with Deep Fissure is that you actually have to hit them. So if you're playing at range a lot like you do on a sword, you have to play a little bit closer in this build. And then also you have Deceptive Predator, which is going to give you minor evasion, and it's also going to give you major expedition, which if you combine that with Hurricane, you're getting a shit ton of speed in open world, and you can also have Streak too. So you still have your Merciless Resolve and Incap to knock somebody out in open world, but I love this in open world because I have a ton of recoveries and does a ton of damage. As far as the skill sets that I'm running Shattered Fate instead of Rallying in open world, just because I want to have a little bit more offensive penetration, especially as a ranged Sorc. I'm also not always in the thick of the battle, so I'm playing at range. And so if somebody comes and chases me, I can often run away or just streak away and then re-engage them. I don't have to be right in the thick of the battle. I didn't go over my CP and all of these different skill lines, but they don't really change in much of the builds. I'm going to go back to my original one that I had up real quick. I'm going to go over my CP. So this is the CP that I run when I'm dueling and often when I'm in open world and BGs too. Now obviously CP doesn't matter in BGs, but let's go over this anyways. So CP I'm running is Focus Mending. It's going to give us 10% healing increase. Then we're running Fighting Finesse, which is 8% critical damage and critical healing. And then Ironclad is going to reduce damage flat across the board by 6%. Master at Arms is going to increase our damage to our direct damage by 6%. And we have Pain's Refuge, which is going to reduce damage up to 20%. You have to get 10 stacks of that. Fortified, which oftentimes, Fortified is Flex 1. You can slot anything other than Fortified. I just like having a little bit more reduction in damage here. And we're also running Sustain by Suffering for more health, mag, and stand recovery, and then Juggernaut. Now the difference in this one compared to this in open world when we're running, we should have Survival Instincts instead of Fortified, because that's going to allow us to do a lot more roll dodging and blocking while we're in open world. So I like to run Survival Instincts. And if you're not going to run Speed like the Animal Companions, you can slot Celerity over Juggernaut when you're in open world. So if you're running any of those other open world builds that don't give you the full speed, like the Deceptive Predator combined with the Hurricane does, then you can run Celerity on any of those other builds in open world to give you the speed you want. All right, well, those are all the builds. I know this video is going on long. I'm going to go over some clips and show you the highlights and how I run this build, these different builds, so that you can see how I play it. Alright, well I super appreciate you watching the video all the way through. I hope you check out some of these builds and they work for you. Let me know in the comments below what you're running in subclassing and what's the most fun playstyle that you're running right now. I always look forward to seeing new builds and seeing what people are coming up with. With subclassing dropping, there's all sorts of builds. I see more theory crafting happening now than ever before. Even though all of it may boil down to one or two small meta builds, I truly do like subclassing. I think it opens up a huge door for a lot of creativity in build theory, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody's running. Also, I appreciate you sending me comments in the game and letting me know how you appreciate these videos. So I appreciate all my subscribers. Feel free to drop a like and a comment. Let me know what I can do to produce more content for you. I look forward to seeing you guys out there. Have a great rest of your day.